This is CaneSport Inside the Lines, our lads football network, as the Miami Hurricanes come off another home win. This one off the Pitt Panthers, and an important win, Gary, because as we talked about last week, it was tough to lose the way that they did in Clemson, and you could tell in this game because Pitt's still a very well coached team, very strong defense, and we saw that in this game. And it was important for Miami to get over the hump, and because it was a sloppy type game, and I thought that was really good to see that even though it was sloppy, they kept churning offensively. The defense came up with big plays, and they were just a better team than Pitt, and they didn't give the game away as much as they tried to, but they were very resilient, and that's something we have not seen from this program over the last few years.
No, perfectly said, Greg. And the biggest thing for Miami, and it's something that Manny Diaz has been stressing to his team week after week, is that they're actually winning the games. And that's a step forward for this program because there were too many games like last week's game that they were losing the past couple years. And you don't go from the bottom to the top all in one step. It usually involves incremental steps. And winning these games without question is an incremental step for the Hurricanes. It wasn't pretty, but like you said, they struggled to run the ball. They struggled quite a bit on third downs. The offense really had to be bailed out by a couple of huge explosive plays that Rhett Lashley, the offensive coordinator, was able to draw up. But at the end of the day, they walked out of there with a convincing victory, and that's without question progress for a program that last year was losing to Virginia Tech, was losing to Georgia Tech in games exactly like what we
Yeah.
saw on Saturday.
I also, and look, it's also an obvious analysis that it shows you too the difference in football, especially in college, in a conference like the ACC, which is outside of Clemson, is completely wide open every season with all the other teams. The biggest difference is quarterback. The
No
talent at
doubt.
quarterback can put you over the top in these types of games because we get these types of games every week in the ACC.
Yeah, and it's not that he was spectacular on
No,
Saturday.
no.
He wasn't. I mean, 16 of 31. But when the plays are there, he makes the play.
Yeah.
Like he's not blowing up, easy touchdowns and things like that. He's making the plays that he needs to make to get the ball into the end zone. And yes, that is the difference from what they've had.
Okay, let's take a look at how the game transpired. First of all, Yellen started the game for Pickett. We talked about that last week, and we communicated, I think it was on Friday after I found out that the line had shot up about 3 points, that somebody must know something about the court, about whether Pickett's playing or not, because the
Yep.
line shot up. And it came back down a little by game time, but it was still, I think, about 14 or something close to that. But anyway, Yellen played, and Yellen actually played. He had a good game last year against USC. Even though he threw a couple of interceptions, he had 3 touchdown passes. I watched that game and I said, hey, for a young, I think he was a freshman last year, he's got potential. So maybe this is somebody that Pitt can work with in a few years, but he's still young, learning the new offense. So that helped out Miami, no question. And they, boom, opened up with Harris's touchdown. He was wide open. And they led that to 0.7-0, and then one of the big plays happened. Well, I thought it was a huge play, and is the kid's name is it Dunson, the one who made the tackle on the fake punt?
Yes, Isaiah Dunson. That was a massive play because that was there. Like great job by
Yes.
Pitt stuffing that out in preparations during the week, and it was there. And the kid missed the block, and part of that was due to Dunson doing a good job of eluding the block, and he made the play and stopped what would have been a massive play for Pittsburgh.
Yep. And instead of Pittsburgh getting the ball in Miami territory, Miami had the ball in Pittsburgh territory, led to their second touchdown. And that
Yep.
was really the difference in the game because they were able to get that 14-0 lead. And even though there was a lot of sloppiness after that, that really was the difference. And then there was a very interesting part late in the first half. Bolden looked like he was going to get an interception taken away from him. Phillips had the roughing the passer penalty. and that was the second of the half. We'll start with that because we've been talking about it all season, and it continues to happen. And I think it's interesting. I think when you're talking about kids, especially in college, I think there's a fine line because you want them to play with their hair on fire, but eventually they just have to learn that look, there is a fine line between penalties and physical play. Miami's got to try to start avoiding that because they continue to rank in the lower half of the nation in penalties.
Well, especially in today's game where they're going to the extremes to try to protect quarterbacks and protect
Yep.
players from big hits and concussions and things like that. You're not getting the benefit of the doubt from the referees. I think that's been proven. And I thought it was a step forward that the safeties got through a game without an incident this past week. Clearly something they've been working
Yeah.
on, and there were no targeting calls on the safeties this week.
Yeah.
But without question, defensive players have to be aware of how they're tackling, the techniques they're using, and really, try to, keep the helmet from becoming a weapon.
All right. So anyway, that did not hurt Miami because Pittsburgh's running back, and it looked like it was about to be a touchdown, but he ran out of bounds at the Miami 4, stepped out of bounds. That was a big break for Miami. And on the next play, Harrison Hunt got the sack, forced the fumble, but Pittsburgh did recover. They kicked the field goal 14-3, but we got to talk about Harrison Hunt. This is a very young kid. He is now developing into a very key part of this defense, and give him some more development over the next year or two, and he has star written all over him.
Yeah, we'll star we'll see, but he's without question one of the rising young talents on the team. A real athletic kid. He was a basketball player in high school, and they're taking that raw ability and they're building on it. They're building his frame up, and now as a second year player, he's at the point where they feel comfortable putting him in games, and he leads the team in sacks. Greg,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of amazing. You think of Roche and Phillips on the outside, but Hunt, he leads the team in sacks and is just doing a phenomenal job when they put him in there. They're not like overloading him or anything like that. I think they're doing a really nice job of bringing him along. But I think the second half of the season, we're going to see his reps continue to go up because he is producing when he's out there.
It's amazing. It's I hate having to say this because I've been a part of this, and I will continue to be a part of it my entire existence, rooting for my teams in college. It is the old, what could have been, and that is Rousseau if he was here. Because with that defensive line with Roche and Harrison Hunt and Phillips, boy, if Rousseau was on this team, just imagine how much better. Even the defense is still, I think, one of the top defenses in the country in sacks, and
Well, you
that's
would have had all four of them rushing the passer on
yes,
third down,
yeah,
probably.
imagine that. So
Probably would have moved Russo or Phillips inside and had Hunt inside, and
yeah,
you know, I mean, it would have been a hell of a pass rushing unit.
uh,
But they're still doing okay.
yes, they're doing fine. Anyway, later came the Paris Ford interception off the deflected pass. He returned it to the 12, but a great run stop. And he had two excellent run stops. Quincy Roche on third down limited Pittsburgh to another field goal, 14-6. So, yeah, even though it was a bad break, the deflection, the interception, the great field position, Miami's defense held again.
Roche had his best game as a Hurricane, and you really didn't know, truthfully, what to expect from him coming in. We knew he was a good pass rusher at Temple. I think ACC football is, even though it's not the SEC, I think ACC is at a higher level than what he had been playing at Temple. So we didn't really know what to expect, and he's not putting sacks on the board the way he did there. I think he's got 2.5 now for the season. But it was nice to see him just, make plays the way he did. He graded out exceptionally in that game, which I think is a big deal for him. He's obviously, trying to build an NFL resume for himself. And he's probably going to end up being an outside linebacker in the pros. So I think it's like really important for him to make plays in the run game too, and show the pro scouts, what he can do in terms of that he's not just a one-dimensional pass rusher.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
And
all
especially
in
if he
all,
winds up playing, because and it's definitely of the 3-4 variety. You're going to get him out on the edge, and you're going to be able
yes.
to have a guy that, especially on passing downs, he's going to be a 3-down guy. He's going to be able to stay out there on passing downs and rush the passer, and he's proven that he can be not only a pass rusher but also a run stopper.
Yeah, and he clearly has a lot of potential, and as a kid that you're rooting for. It's funny. We've been having debates lately on our message boards at CaneSport.com, and on our we do some talk shows during the week and stuff, and people are starting to wonder, is this kid elite? Is he an elite player? And he's starting to show up on some draft projections. And I haven't been ready to go there yet because I just don't feel like we've seen enough.
Mm-hmm.
But without question, in the Pitt game in particular, the matchups were favorable for him, and he was able to show his ability maybe a little bit more than he had in a couple of the other games this year.
All right, first drive of the second half, and it happened pretty fast. On the first drive, King to Harley for the touchdown, and there you go. So it was another one where the receiver's wide open, and he's able
Yeah.
to scamper into the end zone. So some miscommunication going on in the Pittsburgh secondary, and Miami and King they were able to take advantage of that.
Well, the one thing that Rhett Lashley is doing a great job of is he's walking into the stadium on Saturday with, 3 or 4 like really craftily designed plays in his back pocket that when he needs them, he can pull out and feel relatively comfortable that he's going to get a big play out of it. And it's been showing up in every single game. And to me, it's what sets this guy apart from a lot of offensive coordinators. I mean, the Miami defense isn't giving up plays like that. Not even like, when Clemson was scoring, they were still earning it. You weren't seeing, coverage busts and things like that. I mean, they've done a great job of putting a lot of mental pressure on the defense and getting those 21 points a game that are making the difference for them right now, even though they might be struggling a little bit, and it's covering up for the warts they have. Like, let's be honest, their offensive line is not great. They're not getting any production at all out of their receivers this year. They've got 9 guys on the depth chart this week listed as potential first teamers at wide receiver, Greg. And the reason for that is, the coaches are just throwing up their arms and saying, would somebody please step forward and prove that you're a starter on this team? Like, they're not getting separation. They're not running good routes. They're not making plays on the ball. It's been kind of rough at wide receiver so far this year.
Yep. And especially with Jordan out, because
and he's a tight end.
Yeah.
And you can't just rely on the tight ends all the time. So it's a Miami offense that does have some warts, and Rhett Lashley has been able to cover those up with big explosive plays for walk-in touchdowns that are giving them enough points to leave with victories.
Okay, now Bolden, who's having a nice season, he gets beat for a 55-yard reception by Addison. Addison's a good player for Pitt. But then, once again, Quincy Roche, his second big run stop, 5 yards in the backfield on second down, forces Pitt into a third and long. They have to settle for another field goal, and it's right there. I mean, Roche's 2 big run stops force Pitt into a third and long, can't convert field goals. And we know Roche is not going to the pros as a 3-4 defensive end, to stop the run, but he's a penetrator. And that's what makes him so, I think, interesting at the next level, because there's a huge gap as far as talent in the NFL. Teams that play 3-4, you've got the Ingrams and some of the other stars, of course. The Von Miller leads the pack, but there's so many 3-4 teams that play right now that don't have the Watts and some of the stars that desperately need pass rushers, penetrators. And Roche proved once again that, hey, I might not be going after the quarterback, but I'm stopping the running back 4 or 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and those plays meant so much to Miami in this game. One of the keys was they were holding Pitt to field goals when they got in the red
Yep.
zone, and three of them, as a matter of fact, and that was obviously a huge factor in the game. And Roche was a big part of that. And a lot of credit to the Miami defense in general for getting that done.
All right. Then you had the bad pass by King. And the analysis, I think, tried to get him off the hook. The guy who was analyzing the game from his living room, talking about, well, it's cover two, and King got confused. And look, King is staring down right there at the receiver. Cover two had nothing to do with it.
Probably his worst play of
Yeah, there
the
was a
season.
guy, there's a defender right there. He could see him, and he just tried to, I guess, get it into a tight window, which was just not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. No, it was probably his worst play of the season. He's been so good and so steady and reliable, and it was an unusual mistake for him.
So it was okay, though, because even though Pitt, after 3 field goals, was able to get it to 21-16, you had another huge play by Roche and by Phillips, combining for the strip sack at the Pitt 38-yard line. And Mallory then ends up wide open for a 45-yard touchdown, 28-16, game over.
Yeah, and that play right there with Mallory is an example of what I'm talking
That
about.
was a beautiful play, by the way. Beautiful diagram play.
Well, earlier in the game, they showed Mallory as a blocking back, so they had already shown that, and now they ran a wrinkle off of that where Mallory lining up in the backfield goes through the line like he's a blocking fullback, and just
nobody's there to pick him up. Yeah,
and he just keeps going.
Yeah,
and it very well designed, very well thought out. It worked exactly as it was intended to, and he had a walk-in touchdown.
Yeah, so
and those are the kind of plays, Greg, that Rhett Lashley is dialing up this entire season so far.
All right,
only against Clemson was he not able to do it.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Off to Virginia this Saturday night, 8:00, another primetime game, and this is not the same Virginia team from last year, and that's because offensively, and it's interesting because you would look at the stats and you go, wait a second. Virginia is actually gaining more yards this year than they gained last year. So the offense must be better, right? Well, that's why statistics don't always tell you the whole story, because Bryce Perkins was the entire offense last year. They had a couple of the good players. They had Reed as a receiver. So they had a couple of guys, but it was all Perkins. He was the leading rusher by far. He was their passer. He was all Virginia, and he's gone. And the quarterbacks right now that they're playing, and I know this kid Armstrong may not play, and he's the starter. He's a lefty. I've seen him play a few times. He doesn't have a very doesn't have very strong arm. I mean, this is not an imposing passing team. The two guys, Armstrong and Stone, have combined for 8 touchdowns and 9 picks.
Yeah. The thing they really miss, obviously, Bryce Perkins. I mean, it wasn't just the stats and the yardage. That guy was the rock of that football team, and he just made every single play that they needed. I mean, they were a combined 17-10 in 2018 and 2019, which for Virginia is really, 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 really good. And now they come into this game 1-3. Their only victory against a Duke squad that has a 1-5 record.
Yep.
Obviously, they've taken losses the last few weeks that weren't great. Last week without their quarterback. So it's been a little bit of a surprise just because we're used to better from Virginia. They do have a reasonable amount of talent back on defense, and despite that, they've been giving up a lot of points. I mean, they gave up 41 to Clemson, 38 to NC State, and 40 to Wake Forest. And that's been what's been so shocking.
Yes.
Because when they played Clemson earlier in the season, they really didn't look too bad on defense.
Yeah.
And Bronco Mendenhall is a very good defensive coach.
Very good coach.
Yeah, and it's just
it is surprising. This is still a talented football team on defense.
Yeah, they do have some talent, and the only explanation I can come up with for that is their secondary has been breaking down. They've been giving up a lot of big touchdown plays, which I'm sure I'm sure Rhett Lashley loved to see that when he was watching the game tape. But it's been a little uncharacteristic of them to do that. And, maybe that's the best way you could put your finger on the disparity on defense for them, because, on the face value, this was going to be a team built around their defense
Yes.
because they did have some decent players coming back.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Pittsburgh, where we knew they were better defensively than they were showing in some of the games. We saw some of that talent last week, but we also saw the three big breakdowns, and
Yep.
that's definitely what's going on with Virginia. I mean, Joey Blunt is a very solid safety back there. They seem to just every couple of years you get a new star back there for Virginia in deep patrol. But Joey Blunt is a really good player. Brenton Nelson was the 2017 ACC Rookie of the Year. But corners, that's really what's killing them. They're not getting any production there. But the linebackers, I mean, last year with Mack, they were one of the best linebacking units in all of college football. But you only lost Mack. Everybody else is back, and now Nick Jackson, a really good recruit, freshman last year, has broken out this year. So he's kind of replacing the production from Mack. You still have Noah Taylor, Charles Snowden, and Zane Zandier. I mean, Zandier is like an old school, like middle linebacker kind of
Yes.
guy, but Snowden is the real interesting one, and even Taylor. Taylor's 6'5". Snowden is 6'7", about 235. I mean, he is. The scouts are going to love this guy when he comes out this year in the draft. But he's kind of off to a slow start statistically. But it's a very talented unit, and it just shows you how surprising it is that as good as this linebacker unit is, and I still think it's one of the best in the nation, that their defense has just been so poor.
Yeah, and it's because of the pass coverage breakdowns. So here's the thing as it pertains to this game this weekend. Can Miami, a team that's been struggling to throw the ball downfield, exploit that weakness in the Virginia secondary?
They should be able to.
Their receivers must show up this week, and that's going to obviously be a big key. I got to think Virginia comes in. They're going to try to shut down the running game and turn Miami into a one-dimensional throwing team. And we'll see what happens. Something's going to have to give. Either Virginia's pass defense is going to get better, or the Miami receivers are going to emerge this weekend. And obviously, from the Miami standpoint, that's what they have in mind.
All right, let's dive deeper as far as the trends are concerned first. And
Love your trends.
And some of the stats. Miami's a 12-point favorite. They're 3-0 at home. Virginia 0-2 on the road. And as far as some key trends for Miami, their win last week moves them at 4-0, straight up and against the spread as a favorite this season. Clemson, the only game they lost, obviously a dog in that one.
Right.
Meanwhile, the series trends for the two teams, Miami has beaten Virginia 4-5, but Virginia's covered 3 out of 5 in those games. The home team has won 7 of 8 in the series and covered the last 2. But keep this in mind, this is the biggest one that favors Virginia. The dog in the series has covered 13 of the last 16 Miami, Virginia matchups. So there's definitely, especially with the spread at 12, I can see this game being very similar to what we saw last week. But and Yellen may not have looked good, but I still think he's a better quarterback than what we're going to see on Saturday night for Virginia.
Well, I can't explain it. I don't really know what the reason for it is, but for whatever reason it is, Virginia has been a team that has given Miami a hard time for many years now.
That happens.
They're always just good enough to where they can put a good game plan together and give you fits. And I think that kind of applies to Saturday, even though they're coming in with a record that's not so great and they've been struggling a little bit. Bronco is capable of putting a game plan together on the defensive side that gives you a hard time. And Miami struggled to run the football, which is not great. Their offensive line is average at best, and there are things there that you can exploit. And so the question is, I think that's going to be the eventuality in this game is Miami's ability to hit the big plays like everybody else has been doing on
Yep,
Virginia.
absolutely. And I think also we probably shouldn't all blame the defense because it's the offense with those 9 interceptions. Matter of fact, if you look at it, Virginia's turnover margin this year is there are only 6 teams in the nation worse than Virginia. They're -4 turnover margin. They've lost 12 turnovers already this season, 9 picks and 3 fumbles, compared to Miami, third in the nation with 7 forced fumbles. So we
Mhm.
know, and that's the thing when I look at these two teams, both of them are well coached, but and there's talent on Virginia's defense as we talked about, but there's no the talent that, again, we've gone over the running back, the tight end, the quarterback situation for Miami. This is one of those games where they have that edge. There are no playmakers offensively for Virginia. None. There's
No,
nobody.
but they do have one thing going for them, Greg, that could become a factor in this game, and that is they have a veteran offensive line.
Yes.
That they didn't lose any starters off the O line from last year. They do still average 4.5 yards per rushing
Yep.
attempt, and it's still an offense that has been putting up 423 yards a game.
Sure.
So the turnovers have been killing them, no question about it. But
You hit it on the head with
they
the offensive line. That's the strength of their offense.
Yeah, and they might decide that, you know what, we're going to come out and we're going to make Miami prove that its linebackers and defensive linemen can stop the running game, and they might decide to just come out and pound the rock this week, and try to turn it into a power football game as opposed to a finesse game. So I don't want to call them a dangerous team, just because of the way that they've started their season. But they're certainly not a team that you can just overlook. They've got some good
Oh yeah, of
players, like
course. Yeah.
like like we mentioned. You talked about the guys on the defensive side of the ball. The linebackers, Andler and Snowden, the safety Blunt. I mean, those are good potentially all ACC type of players. If they get their quarterback back, and if their coaching has usually been pretty good, this is certainly not a game that Miami can look past without exposing itself to a little bit of danger.
Yeah, they can't turn the ball over in significant ways the way they did against Pitt and just expect that's okay. We'll come back and win again. That'll catch up to you. And this is that
Yeah.
type of team that wants that to happen. Virginia's going to want to create those types of big plays because, and like you said, the offensive line is good. They can move the ball. But when you don't have the playmakers I'm talking about, it's hard for you to then score as many points as you'd like because you can't get those easy scores because you don't have the
Right.
playmakers. So I think that's and matter of fact, Virginia time of possession this year, 12th in the nation. So that shows you that with that offensive
Interesting.
line, they could and the running average, they can move the ball. Between the 20s, they can move the ball. But even when they get inside the red zone, they're one of the worst teams in the nation in the red zone because, again, you get into the red zone, you need playmakers to step up. You got to get guys that can get into the end zone. Virginia is only 60th in the nation in red zone percentage. So I think that's the difference. Is Miami's got a couple, and of course they got King against whoever Virginia is going to play a quarterback is the big edge.
Should be, no doubt about it.
All right, so that is the game on Saturday night. What's next for Miami?
After Virginia, boy, good question. I haven't looked that far. I'm not thinking that far ahead. You're
I
you're
know
you're
the
hitting me with
schedule
a
is so weird. That's why I always ask you. I can't even
you're
look
hit,
at my
you're hit, you're
books.
hit, you're hitting me with a loaded question there, but I'll have the answer for you in one second. Let's see. After Virginia, the next game after that is a road game at NC State after an open week.
So NC State and a bye, open week. Okay.
Well, no, after Virginia there's a
Oh,
bye, and
bye
then
and then NC State.
and then the road trip to NC State, and then road trip to Virginia Tech
Oh, a couple
after
of
that.
road games, and those to see
Yeah.
that's why you've got to take advantage of this game this week because when you come off that bye week, you've got 2 road games that are not going to be easy. NC State, they got a young quarterback who's been playing better. He got hurt last week. NC State still was able to win that game against Duke. But they have a very good. I mean, Dorn is an excellent recruiter, as you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah. The question is, do they have a backup quarterback? And I
I
don't
don't
know the
think
answer
so.
to
No, the guy that was throwing the ball in that game against Duke, if he's out there in 2 weeks, they're in trouble. So I think he got more than enough time to get the kid healthy. I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen any.
that. No, I didn't know. I think he's out. He had a
Really?
broken fibula. Yeah, he's out for a while.
Okay, that's a big break for Miami then. So yeah,
Yeah, I
unless
don't
they
know.
can,
I don't know if you'll see him again this year.
uh,
Yeah, I mean,
if they,
broken fibula, they say can be a 4 to 6
that's
week type of
huge.
thing.
That's huge.
But
So
yeah, my guess.
unless they take a red shirt off of a really talented kid, then the guy that was playing there against Duke,
You liked him, huh?
wow, no, really bad. So we'll see
Oh,
whether or
okay.
not that's a big break in a few weeks when we have the opportunity to talk about it. But then the Virginia Tech game also going to be very, very tough. That's a good team. But hopefully, Miami, take care of business on Saturday night the way you're supposed to. Feel good with the time off you have. And then you can go back into the drawing board and figure out a way to come out of the break with some momentum. So, Gary, appreciate it as
That's
always.
the plan.
Yeah. And enjoy the game on Saturday night. And we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, Greg.